When backpacking and hiking long distances, getting a proper amount of sleep and good sleep is incredibly important. Day after day, you have to hike 15, 20, 30 miles to get to a new town without running out of food. You don't want to do that while sleep deprived, because sleep deprivation leads to tripping on rocks, possibly injuring yourself, making bad decisions that could lead to worse problems. So sleep is a very important thing. Everyone has different tolerances for comfort, and every trail you hike, you're going to come across different conditions. So I'll go over a bunch of sleep system options, and you can decide which one suits your style the most and which one would fit the trail you're hiking the most. To start out, the base of any sleep system is going to be your sleeping pad. A sleeping pad not only insulates you from the cold ground, but it also provides comfort when you're sleeping on hard, compact surfaces. Sleeping pads come in a variety of shapes, sizes, thicknesses, and materials, so let's look at some. I personally use the thinnest sleeping pad imaginable. It is only 1/8 of an inch thick, and it only runs from about my shoulders to my hips. For the rest of my legs, I just have my backpack laying underneath them, and that adds a little bit of extra comfort. For the most part, with a torso-sized pad, I really just want my core to be warm and my core to be comfortable. The main points for the most amount of weight, my upper body and my lower body, where they're going to be touching the ground and hitting the ground. That is what I want my sleeping pad to cover, and that is why I use what I use. So this is a foam pad, and mostly what you will see others using are also foam pads. They are extremely durable, they insulate very well, they are very easy to use, and oftentimes extremely cheap. With a foam pad, you just take it out of your pack, roll it out onto the ground, and lay on it. So it's about as simple as it gets. Although I personally use an extremely thin foam pad, there are many others out there that are quite a bit thicker that I do highly recommend. Those are a lot more comfortable, and the only real trade-off is the smallest amount of weight and quite a bit of extra bulk. But oftentimes, if you're just strapping the pad to the top of your pack, to the bottom of your pack, or stuffing it somewhere inside, it's really not that big a deal. This is just a torso-length pad like what I use, except this one is my girlfriend's, and it is quite a bit thicker and is going to be quite a bit warmer than mine. And this one is a full-length foam pad that folds up into really nice little sections. I think many people are surprised when it comes to how comfortable a foam pad can be, and many more people will choose a foam pad simply because of how easy to use it is. The other main option here is an inflatable pad. They are oftentimes the most comfortable of the bunch, the warmest. They pack down quite small, but they do have a couple major downsides to them. One of those being their durability. A inflatable mattress is not going to be very durable. Here I am in the land of pine needles, sleeping under pine trees, and one of these pine needles, or one of these small little sticks or twigs, or maybe a cactus needle or a rock, just about anything could pinch it or poke it, and it's going to get a hole, and it's going to leave you with no pad to sleep on, potentially for days until you get to a town. And then you're going to have to deal with trying to replace one quickly, maybe spending extra on a hotel waiting for that pad to come in. So the durability of an air mattress is seriously at question. So the only other major downside of these that I personally see is that, in my opinion, I don't think they're very easy to use. And I mean that in the sense of every night after you're done with a long day of hiking, you're probably tired, you probably want to eat, you're going to be sitting there at your campsite and you're going to be inflating your air mattress just with your lungs. You're going to be spending however long that takes blowing your lungs out to try and inflate this thing. And for me, that is not something that I really want to be doing at the end of the day. So for many people, the comfort of an air mattress, the warmth of an air mattress, and how small they pack down makes these downsides worth it to them. But there is one other small thing, that an air mattress is going to be more expensive. You know, whereas a foam pad, you could probably get it for like $20 or something, maybe even less. Whereas an air mattress can oftentimes cost you upwards of $100 or maybe even more than that. For through hikes in the winter or just winter backpacking trips, surely I would use an air mattress for the warmth. But for any other trip, I will always go with a foam pad. They are easy to replace, they are extremely durable, and in general, foam pads are just more comfortable for me. Or rather, they're just comfortable enough. If you were to imagine a sleeping bag, you know, just this long tube that wraps fully around the body, all the way around, if you imagine that, and then just remove the backside where you would be laying on the ground, that is what a quilt is. It is a sleeping bag, except without the backside, so you just tuck the sides in and around underneath you. A quilt or sleeping bag is just absolutely essential and truly the most important part of any sleep system. Personally, I use a quilt, and I would say that most people these days also use quilts. The reasoning behind why this is actually a desirable thing is that when you're in a sleeping bag and you're sleeping on top of that insulation, you're actually compressing it. And when down or these other synthetic fabrics are compressed, they are no longer insulating you and they are no longer keeping you warm. So with a quilt, they've just removed that backside, and instead of hoping that your sleeping bag is keeping you warm back there, you are now just allowing your sleeping pad to keep you warm in that same way. So for most people and most trails, I would recommend a quilt. They are significantly more lightweight. You can easily tuck the sides around you to keep out drafts and wind. They pack down a lot smaller in your backpack since they're using a lot less fabric. And since you're going to have a sleeping pad underneath you, you are really losing almost nothing. And I say almost because if you know that you are an extremely cold sleeper, that you really need those extra clothes, that you really need that extra warmth, like maybe you're a very thin person, or if you're going on extremely cold trips like in the winter or maybe the very late fall up at elevation or something, then that is when I would probably recommend a sleeping bag instead. I recommend this because, you know, you don't have to worry about if it's going to be tucked in on the sides to keep out drafts. It's always going to be tucked in the side because it's just a big cocoon. There's never going to be like a fail point where you're either letting warm air out or cold air in. So if you know for a fact that you're a cold sleeper, then maybe consider a sleeping bag instead, or just getting a warmer and larger quilt. Now, there are two main types of insulation for these types of things. The first, and probably the most popular, being down feathers, and the second being some sort of synthetic material. With down insulation, you have the most lightweight insulation possible. It packs down very, very small. However, down is a little bit more expensive most of the time. Generally, a down quilt is more durable, so you're hopefully getting more life out of it for that extra money. With down, you must be extremely careful not to get it wet. When it's wet, the down feathers kind of like clump up together and compress and are no longer going to be keeping you warm at all. But typically with waterproof backpacks and simply in a lot of ways waterproof stuff sacks, or I just use a trash bag, it's really not that hard to keep down dry if that's what you go with. And the last little thing about down is that it uses animal products. So for those opposed to that, then down is probably not the best thing for you. The main thing about synthetic, and the reason that I'd used a synthetic quilt for so many years, although I've now kind of transitioned into down quilts, synthetic is still warm when it's wet. So it's still going to insulate you, it's still going to keep you warm, and it is going to be a lot safer than down if you were to make a mistake and get your sleeping bag soaked somehow. Synthetic materials are also probably most of the time, if not all of the time, going to be cheaper. However, synthetic quilts don't really pack down as small, so you're going to need maybe a slightly larger backpack or a heavier backpack. Synthetic quilts are much heavier for the amount of warmth you're going to get, though if you do happen to get a synthetic quilt wet, it will more than likely dry faster than if you were to get a down quilt wet. And kind of the last thing, synthetic as far as I know, doesn't really use animal products. For me, I think the drier environments, or especially hiking out on the west coast, or maybe trips where you just want to go as light as humanly possible, then a down quilt is really going to shine in those areas. So on the other hand, hiking out east and trails like maybe the Appalachian Trail, I think are where synthetic materials really shine. So when it comes to temperature ratings, I would say that for most thru hikers and most thru hikes, a 20-degree quilt is probably going to be the best option. Now, if you're going faster and you're hiking in maybe a smaller window, so you can choose better weather, warmer weather, or maybe you're just looking to go as light as humanly possible, maybe you're a warmer sleeper like myself, then that is where the 30 degrees come into play a lot more. It's a very personal thing of how warm do you want to be, how comfortable do you want to be, and really looking into the type of weather you're going to run into on your thru hike. It is always helpful looking up others' gear lists for the trails that they have done, you know, and those that have been successful on the trails you're planning, and seeing what they used and seeing what they had to say about it. So remember, with temperature ratings, you will also be supplementing this with the clothes that you bring. I personally don't like sleep-specific clothes, as I feel they add a lot of weight and a lot of bulk to your pack. But instead, think of the warm clothes that you would be wearing on a cold day while out hiking. Those are the same clothes that you should be using to sleep in. So a 30-degree quilt, for instance, with a good sleeping pad and wearing all of your clothes at once while you're in it, can go down to maybe 25 degrees or possibly even lower. So we've got your core sleeping stuff in order. What else? You know, is there anything else to this sleep system stuff? And for some people, no, that's it. You know, you have your quilt, you have your sleeping pad, you go to sleep. But there are other people who really like to sleep with some sort of a pillow. Personally, I will use my food bag as a pillow. I will use my extra clothes that I'm maybe not wearing as a pillow. And all of those things have always done wonderfully for me. But there are some people that just don't really jive with that. And, you know, I can dig it. That's totally fine. For those people, there are inflatable pillows. And these are obviously a lot cheaper than an entire inflatable pad. You know, since it's only really resting under your head, it's going to be a lot more durable than possibly an entire inflatable pad. So an inflatable pillow is a really wonderful option. Now, one word of caution, I would avoid the most ultralight of pillows out there, as those are the ones you're going to spend like $10, $20, $30 on, and they're going to break pretty early on. A pillow is totally a luxury item, and you can definitely get away without it. But again, if you enjoy it, then why not? So as little extras here for sleep systems, some people really like having a designated pair of sleeping socks. You know, maybe some warmer socks that they can wear to bed. You know, if they have cold feet. I think that would be a lot better than having an entire sleep outfit that you're carrying around and lugging around only to sleep in. You know, just try out some warmer and thicker socks. So I would say that's sleep systems. If I have forgotten anything, or if there's anything that you would like to add to this, please comment that down below. For me, the biggest considerations of a sleep system are what pad are you going to use, which one is going to be the most comfortable and the easiest for you, and then of course, what temperature rating you would like in a quilt, and if you would prefer a sleeping bag instead. Generally, after a long day's hiking, you will be so tired that many of these choices aren't even gonna sort of matter or cross your mind when you're actually out there doing it. But when temperatures get really cold, you're gonna be really happy that you did not skimp out on your sleep system. Because, you know, this is not just your comfort out on trail, but this is in a lot of ways also like your safety. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching.